Usually when we sit down to prep for a deep dive, the topic feels singular, you know?
You're right.
We're doing the history of espresso or the mechanics of quantum computing. It's one thing in one box. But today, I've got this stack of research from Ingredientsage in front of me, and I honestly feel like we're looking at something that is living a double life, maybe even a triple life.
That is a very mysterious introduction. Are we talking about a spy novel or an ingredient?
Well, think about it. We have this massive, comprehensive technical guide to castor oil. And on one page, I'm reading about high-end beauty serums, people putting this stuff on their eyelashes, you know, for that trendy glass skin look. It's all very luxe and natural. And then I flip maybe 3 pages in the PDF, and suddenly we're talking about heavy industrial machinery, engine lubricants, and chemical processing fluids.
It is quite the spectrum, isn't it? From the vanity table to the factory floor.
Exactly. It's the same oil. So my mission for this deep dive is to figure out how one single ingredient can be a holy grail, clean beauty staple, and also effectively engine grease. We need to decode this guide because honestly, after reading through the safety protocols, I realized that buying the wrong bottle of this stuff isn't just a waste of money. It could actually be dangerous.
That is the crucial point to start with. The source material we have today isn't a beauty blog. It's a technical guide to manufacturing and formulation.
Right.
It looks at castor oil as a chemical product. And you are right. The difference between a beauty hack and a toxic risk comes down to understanding exactly how it was made.
I was actually so surprised by how technical this got. I always thought of castor oil as this simple, natural thing. You know, old-timey medicine that grandmothers used to threaten children with.
Right.
But there is this massive trade-off happening between natural and refined that I just never thought about.
That trade-off is the heart of the matter. To understand why it can be used for both eyelashes and engines, we have to look at the chemistry. It's not just oil.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
Because usually oil is oil, right? Olive, sunflower, canola, they all feel vaguely similar, but this stuff is different.
It is chemically unique among vegetable oils. If you look at the molecular structure, about 90% of the fatty acid content is something called ricinoleic acid.
Ricinoleic acid, that sounds intense.
It acts as the powerhouse of the ingredient. The source notes that this acid is the hallmark of castor oil. It is an unsaturated omega-9 fatty acid, but what makes it special for formulators is its viscosity.
Okay.
In formulation terms, it creates what experts call strong occlusion.
Occlusion is a huge buzzword in skincare right now. Usually that implies trapping moisture, like a greenhouse effect for your skin. Is that what's happening here?
Precisely. Think of your skin like a bucket of water that is constantly evaporating.
Right.
That is transepidermal water loss, or TEWL.
Right.
Most oils, like almond or jojoba, they're relatively light. They sit on the surface, but they breathe a bit. Ricinoleic acid is different. It creates a heavy, durable barrier. It seals the bucket.
Which explains the texture. If you have ever touched pure castor oil, you know it doesn't feel like olive oil. It's thick, it's sticky, it feels...
That is the sensory experience of ricinoleic acid. It is incredibly viscous.
Yeah.
That is why it's so good at reinforcing barriers on skin and hair, but it is also why it makes a great lubricant for machinery. It doesn't break down easily. But, and here is where it gets really interesting for the consumer, there is a catch to all that potency.
There's always a catch.
The expert note in our source material points out that while high ricinoleic acid content is great for that barrier effect, in its natural, less refined state, it comes with a distinct odor and color.
Oh.
You can smell slightly nutty or even unpleasant to some.
Okay, so if I want the purest stuff with the most acid, I have to deal with it smelling kind of funky.
Essentially, yes. And that sets up the central conflict in the production process. Do you want the raw bioactives, or do you want something that is pleasant to use?
Which brings us to the processing wars. The guide mentions 2 main ways: cold press and solvent extraction. Now, I see cold pressed on expensive juice bottles all the time, so I've been trained to assume that's the good one.
In the world of clean beauty and organic certification, yes, cold pressed is considered the premium method. It involves mechanically pressing the seeds, literally crushing them, without using high heat.
Okay.
This retains those bioactives and the integrity of the fatty acids. If you are looking for a USDA-certified organic product, it is almost certainly going to be cold pressed.
Because you're getting the oil exactly as nature intended, like fresh squeezed orange juice.
Exactly. You get the flavor, the vitamins, and the pulp. But in the case of castor oil, you also get that heavy smell and a yellow, sometimes brownish color.
Right. And I imagine if I'm a massive cosmetic company making a lipstick, I don't want my lipstick to smell like beans.
That is where solvent extraction and refining come in. This is the industrial or mass market standard. Instead of just squeezing the orange, think of this like using a solvent like a paint thinner to chemically wash every single drop of oil out of the seed mash.
Whoa, that sounds aggressive.
It is. But then they refine it. Specifically, they use a process called deodorization. They strip out the volatile compounds that cause the smell and color.
So they're bleaching it, essentially.
In a way, they create a neutral oil. No smell, light color, very stable. Now, I want to ask you, why would a brand choose this processed version over the natural cold-pressed one?
Well, based on what you just said, I'm guessing consistency. If I buy a lotion today, I want it to smell the same as the one I bought 6 months ago.
Exactly. If you are formulating a universal skincare lotion or a lipstick or a serum, you need a predictable, odorless base. You don't want your fancy face cream to smell like raw seeds, and you don't want it to go rancid quickly. Refined oil is stable.
That makes sense. So while the consumer me might think cold-pressed is always better because it feels more pure, the chemist making my lotion might prefer the refined stuff because it actually performs better in the mix.
Precisely. It is about the application. But this leads us directly into the most critical part of our source material, the part that actually scared me a little bit, the grades.
Yes. This is the part where I really sat up and paid attention. Because the guide says there are 3 distinct grades, and mixing them up is a really bad idea.
It's a very bad idea.
I think people assume castor oil is just castor oil, but that's not true at all.
It is a dangerous assumption. We need to be very clear here. Not all castor oil is the same. The processing dictates the safety.
Okay, let's walk through them. Grade 1, cosmetic grade. This is the stuff we've been talking about for skin.
Correct. This is what you find in the beauty aisle. Its sole purpose is topical care skin and hair. The source specifies that for this grade, purity is defined by a low peroxide value and minimal free fatty acids. It's designed to be non-irritating.
And crucially, the guide says this often undergoes that deodorization process we talked about so it doesn't smell.
Right. It's meant to be pleasant on the skin.
Yeah.
But here is the key takeaway for the listener, and I cannot stress this enough. Cosmetic grade is not approved for ingestion.
Stick a pin in that. Just because it's pure enough for your face doesn't mean you can drink it.
Correct. Labeling here will use terms like refined, cold-pressed, or deodorized, but it is for external use only.
Okay, grade 2, edible or food grade. This is the stuff you can eat. But wait, if cosmetic grade is pure, why isn't it edible?
Because the standards for putting something inside your body are significantly higher than putting it on your body.
Okay.
The source emphasizes that food-grade oil undergoes rigorous refining, specifically to remove trace solvents, impurities, and specifically to control heavy metals.
So it's actually more processed than the cosmetic stuff.
In many ways, yes. It has to comply with strict food safety regulations. It is used for culinary applications, though rarely for flavor, and mostly for dietary supplements or as a food additive.
And then we have grade 3, the industrial grade, the engine grease.
This is the one you need to be wary of. This is used for lubricants, chemical processing, manufacturing plastics.
The guide was pretty blunt about this. It said high impurity thresholds are allowed.
Yes. It might contain processing residues, solvent traces, or heavier metals that are fine for a machine bearing, but absolutely unsuitable for a human.
So if I buy a giant jug of castor oil from a hardware store because it's cheap, and I decide to use it as a face mask?
Do not do that.
Yeah.
The expert warning is clear: no skin contact and definitely no eating. You are essentially applying industrial runoff to your face.
It's amazing that it's the same plant, but the processing dictates whether it heals you or hurts you.
That is the lesson. The grade on the label isn't just marketing. It is a safety designation.
Okay, so assuming we've got the right grade. Let's say I went out and bought a nice cold-pressed cosmetic grade bottle. What am I actually doing with it? The guide lists a few applications, but there was one specific detail about skincare formulation that blew my mind.
You are referring to the dilution percentage, I assume.
Yes, because I see influencers on TikTok slathering this stuff on pure 100% oil, dripping down their faces, slugging with it. But the guide says, don't do that.
The source suggests a usage range of 1% to 10% in blends.
1 to 10%, that's tiny. Why would you use so little if it's so good?
Because more isn't always better. Remember we talked about how viscous and heavy this oil is?
Yeah.
If you apply 100% castor oil, it is extremely occlusive. It can actually be too heavy. It sits on top of the skin, feels draggy, and can trap heat or clog pores if not careful.
So by using it 100%, you're basically shrink-wrapping your face.
In a sense. The expert advice is that it functions best when it is supported by lighter ingredients, what they call esters or humectants. If you blend 5% castor oil into a lighter carrier oil like jojoba, you get the benefit of that strong barrier without the sticky, suffocating mess.
That explains why my pillowcases are ruined. I've been doing it wrong. I thought pure meant maximum benefit, but it sounds like I'm just wasting product and making a mess. What about hair?
Hair is a massive category for castor oil. It provides scalp conditioning and something the guide calls strand slip.
Strand slip. I like that. Is that just smoothing it down?
Think of a hair strand like a roof covered in shingles. When hair is damaged or frizzy, those shingles are lifted up. Because castor oil is so thick, it physically coats the shaft and lays those shingles down flat.
Oh, wow.
That reduces friction between hairs, hence the slip.
So it's mechanical. It's physically gluing the cuticle down.
Exactly. It improves manageability and shine, not through magic, but through physics.
Okay, I have to address the elephant in the room, or maybe the Breaking Bad in the room.
I know exactly where you were going.
Ricin. We can't talk about castor oil without talking about one of the most deadly poisons known to man. Walter White made it famous.
He did.
The beans contain ricin, so why aren't we all dropping dead when we put this stuff on our eyelashes? How is this not a massive public health crisis?
It is a fair question, and it is often what causes the scare factor. The reality check from our expert source is reassuring, but it involves some specific chemistry. Ricin is a protein, and crucially, it is water-soluble, not oil-soluble.
Ah, so when you press the oil out, the poison stays behind.
For the most part, yes. The ricin stays in the mash or the solid waste. But just to be absolutely sure, the heat involved in the processing, even the friction heat in cold pressing, usually denatures or deactivates any trace of the protein that might remain.
So the oil is safe.
The oil is safe from ricin. However, the source notes that for manufacturers, handling the raw seeds requires strict safety protocols. It is a hazardous environment.
So if you're working in the factory, don't eat the seeds.
Absolutely. 1 or 2 seeds can be fatal. But for the consumer, the risk isn't ricin. The risk comes from how powerful the oil itself is, specifically regarding ingestion.
The guide was pretty stern here. It basically said, do not self-prescribe. But people drink castor oil for constipation all the time, right?
They do, but it is not a gentle remedy. It has a violent laxative effect.
Violent? That doesn't sound like wellness.
It works by irritating the lining of the intestines, forcing them to contract. It can cause severe cramping and dehydration. The source advises seeking medical advice before using it internally. It is not something to play around with just because you feel a bit bloated.
And even for skin, it's not risk-free. I think people assume natural means no reaction, like if it comes from a plant, my body will love it, but the guide suggests otherwise.
Natural ingredients are complex chemical soups. The guide notes that while generally well-tolerated, castor oil can cause contact dermatitis or allergic reactions. And the expert provides a specific how-to for this, which almost no one follows.
The patch test.
The patch test. You apply a small amount behind the ear or on the inner forearm. And here's the key. You have to wait.
Wait, how long? Like 20 minutes?
24 to 48 hours.
48 hours. Who has that kind of patience? I buy the serum. I want to use the serum tonight.
Someone who does not want a rash all over their eyelids has that patience. Delayed hypersensitivity is common. Just because it doesn't burn immediately doesn't mean your immune system isn't revving up a response.
That is actually excellent advice, even if I know I'm going to struggle to follow it. Now, I want to pivot to the final segment of the guide, which felt a bit like a detective story. We're talking about adulteration.
This is a huge issue in the industry. Because castor oil is in such high demand and supply chains are complex and global, fake or adulterated oil is a real risk.
What does fake castor oil look like? Is it just vegetable oil dyed yellow?
Sometimes. Or it is diluted with cheaper oils like sunflower, soy, or cottonseed oil. Or in the worst cases, it is industrial grade passed off as cosmetic grade.
So how do the pros know? If I'm a brand buying 50 drums of this stuff, how do I know I'm not getting scammed with 50% soy oil?
They use some heavy-duty science. The guide mentions GCMS profiling.
GCMS? That sounds like something from CSI.
It stands for gas chromatography mass spectrometry. But you can think of it essentially as a DNA test for the oil.
A DNA test?
Yes. They vaporize a tiny sample, and the machine analyzes the molecular weight of every single component. Nature has a very specific recipe for castor oil. If a supplier tries to cut the oil with 20% soy to save money, this machine catches it instantly because the fingerprint won't match.
Okay, that's cool. But I don't have a mass spectrometer in my kitchen. When I'm at the store, staring at 10 different bottles, what can I actually do?
You have to look for the certifications. This is why those little logos on the back of the bottle matter more than the marketing on the front.
Which one specifically?
Organic is a big one because it requires an audit trail. But also look for GMP, good manufacturing practice, and ISO standards. These certifications mean that a third party has actually come in and audited the supply chain.
It's about traceability.
Exactly. The modern consumer wants to know where the seed came from. The source mentions that traceability is now a core competitive differentiator.
That's a fancy business way of saying prove it.
Yes. Prove that this oil came from a safe farm, was processed correctly, and wasn't mixed with engine lubricant in a warehouse somewhere along the way.
So simply reading the ingredient list isn't enough, because they all just say 100% castor oil?
Correct. The ingredient list tells you what they claim is in the bottle. The certifications tell you if anyone checked to see if they were telling the truth.
That is a disturbing but valuable distinction. Okay, let's wrap this up. We've gone from the seed to the factory to the pharmacy shelf. We've covered ricin, engine grease, and shiny hair. What's the big takeaway for you?
For me, it is that castor oil is defined by its processing. It is not just one thing. It is a spectrum. Whether it is a high-end cold-pressed face oil or a lubricant for a machine, the grade is the only thing that separates a beauty ritual from a health hazard. You cannot ignore the technical specs.
And for me, it's the balance. We want the natural bioactives, that ricinoleic acid, but we also need to respect how potent it is. The fact that the pros dilute it to 5% while we're using it at 100% really stuck with me.
Yeah.
It's not about one being good and the other bad. It's about understanding the chemistry enough to use it safely.
And verifying that the tool is what it says it is.
Exactly. And that leads me to a thought I want to leave you with. We spend so much time analyzing the clean label, worrying about preservatives or parabens, but the source mentioned that traceability is the new standard. As consumers, perhaps we should be looking harder at the certification logos, ISO, GMP, than the ingredients list. If the bottle says natural but doesn't have the stamp to prove where it's been, are we trusting the label too much?
In a world of complex supply chains, blind trust is a risky strategy.
Indeed. Something to think about the next time you're browsing the skincare aisle. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Stay curious.